Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this tonight's workshop, specifically as it's entitled here, Evaluating the Evidence, Online Health Information. So what I was hearing from some of your faculty, and particularly one faculty in particular is recommending this particular workshop, and I believe they are joining us here in this session right now. But so basically this is, wanting to develop skills of navigating online health information, specifically information that you find on the web, on the internet. Because technically, I mean, like if we're talking about online health information, that would probably also include library databases and so on. But for that, we're not going to cover that particular part. Mainly because that's just a whole different type of workshop in that sense. But really, this is just more about finding information that you search through for, using Google or Bing or your preferred internet search engine, and navigating through databases and so on. So we'll be talking about the different pros and cons that comes with the proliferation of health information, especially with the emergence of online technologies and so on, how that's been able to really expand our access to it, but maybe there are some limitations that come across with it. And basically being able to sift through, the wealth of information that's out there and being able to decipher what is credible, what is reliable, what is legitimate, and then also identifying any information that might be misleading or false or even spreading disinformation. So basically we'll be kind of talking about that. And I'm hoping to have this kind of as a more interactive, more conversational workshop too. So feel free at any point to drop comments, questions into the chat. You can feel free to unmute yourself at any point. And then, there's going to be a couple times that you can interact with the actual presentation itself, and I'll explain that as we go along with that. But let's get started. Oh, I guess another thing I should probably say is actually my name. If you don't know me, I'm Matthew Chase. I'm the San Marcos librarian. So I basically manage the San Marcos campus side of things when it comes to all things library, but I do tend to host a lot of these different types of workshops as well online that are available to anyone in the university as well as to the public. So so now we'll get started. Perfect. So the first thing actually, so we get kind of tested out with this Menti feature that I've explained a little bit before, but kind of dip our toes into it. If you want to, on your phone or on your laptop or computer that you're using right now, if you want to go to www.menti.com and use the following code that's located at the top of the presentation here. Basically, you'll be able to access the presentation as I go along, and there will be these type of interactives. So I figured I wanted to kind of ask a question and see what kind of responses we kind of get, is how often do you search the internet for health information, either for your own purposes or research or anything of any reason, really. So I'm just kind of curious to see like what kind of representation we have. So I see some are saying a lot, and then a few are saying almost every day. I figured it would also be funny to have Batman, so it kind of tells you what kind of cartoon Batman you are. Let's see. So looks like predominantly people tend to use the internet for health information a lot, with quite a large minority saying almost every day. And typically I probably would fall also under the category of a lot because I tend to have certain questions about health conditions as they come about with discussions with friends or family or anything like that, or in my own personal journeys through, healthcare and medicine and trying to figure out my own health. So totally understand. And usually the internet is the go-to spot for that, But nice to see. And great to see the use of this feature, in particular the Menti. So we'll be using this a couple times throughout the workshop. But yeah, let's go ahead. And so with that, I also wanted to stress how the relevance of this particular workshop, not just in terms of your own journey as a student, but also in terms of these skills maybe transferring over into your professional lives. And what we'll kind of also contextualize is how, it's not necessarily, maybe as a professional, you'll know better about like what kind of internet sources are legitimate or not as you grow in your experience. But your patients might have questions as they try to navigate their own stuff. As we just said, like, or even I admitted, like I tend to try to consume my own type of health information from what I can find. But as clinicians and as health practitioners, you may have a role to play when it comes to health literacy and being able to uh, in the patient's education regarding their own health and treatments and possibilities for their outcomes. So yeah, so with that, I'll move on. And yeah, basically kind of talk and really, delving deeper into the reasons why this type of workshop and just the general topic itself kind of matters. So yeah, basically what I want to, and something I was already alluding to, is how the internet has allowed for really an unprecedented age of mass information, and especially with the dissemination and the accessibility of it, in the sense that anyone with a computer and with internet can basically access health information through the web. And, it's available to clinicians, it's available to researchers, and perhaps just as importantly, to the public as well. And the issue, though, that comes with that is because of the expansiveness of the internet, is that the information that is contained is being constantly constructed and changed and modified and so on, is rarely critically appraised or regulated in any real systematic way. In other words, kind of like I say here, is anyone can create a website and begin dispensing information, and they might have different reasons for doing that. They might have, the best of intentions in terms of trying to spread out evidence-based information. Others may not necessarily be so selfless, so, as we might say, in terms of maybe they want to sell something, and as we'll talk about, how does that bias the information that's being provided? And even others might have misinformed or misleading information that they're providing unknowingly or intentionally. And, the impact that that can have in terms of clinicians' work as well as patients' outcomes. So really it raises kind of the question is, how can we really sift and sort through the evidence-based information that's available through the internet from the misleading, the false, and or dangerous information that is also present there? And like I said, there's an incredible wealth of information, and that is a pro in the sense of like having so much information available to you, but you don't have possibly the resources, the time, the energy, the staffing to really get into it and actually decipher what is relevant to you and what is trustworthy. And yeah, and again, just to emphasize the point at the bottom there is just as researchers and clinicians, you also may have the responsibility to your patients' outcomes and also their education. Because again, patients are probably more than likely also searching the internet, trying to find out their own health and trying to see possibilities. And they may not necessarily have the same professional skills that you might have as you go along in this program and in your professional lives. So again, you're going to be, in many ways, a leading face of health literacy and health education. But yeah, so with that, we'll go ahead with, so I have this question here about what criteria do you think makes a website good? The reason being, and the reason why I asked this question before I even get into the criteria I would even cover, is because I really wanted to see how you all decipher information on the internet. I'm sure you've all had experience doing it, as kind of indicated from the previous poll. is that you've been using the internet for finding health information, but how do you know that a website is good? And really, this is not just so much so I can gauge where you're at in terms of skill level or knowledge or anything like that, but I'm also hoping that we can also use your criteria and hopefully kind of meld it into the criteria that I would like to cover and that you can incorporate into yours. And so we can kind of have this collaborative set of criteria to determine the validity and the reliability of a website's health information. So I think you should be able to type in like criteria that you would like to. If you feel more comfortable, you can also drop it in the chat as well. I don't mind that either. EDU website, yeah, okay. So any website that has the .edu domain, all right. Like to see that. And that's actually something we'll talk about in a bit. So I'm actually glad that got raised. Anything else that you would use to decipher if a website is good? .gov, easy to navigate, references, .gov, all right. If they use references, Good, I like to see these, .net. Let's see. Cool. So yeah, a lot about domains, which is actually, again, going to be a really important point that we'll kind of go into about as an indicator of a website's quality. Easy to navigate, yeah, and then references. I see a couple of references there to citations, I'm sure, and what exactly are they citing? And that's going to be something we're going to be also discovering as well. So yeah, I like to see this. Awesome. So I think we're at a good start then. And it kind of gives me a better direction of like what exactly, where you're all at too, and how we can actually incorporate these type of criteria. Credibility of source, yeah, exactly. So it's not only do they use references, but what sources are they using is another really important point. Perfect, awesome, cool. So I think with that, we can kind of move forward with that. I'm really glad this Menti is actually working out really well. Yeah, I think yeah, I have this really funny image. You might recognize it if you watch Pokemon at all. But yeah, essentially, what I kind of want to do is actually kind of get into the different types of criteria as you've already started discussing, and basically using that criteria to really decipher like who's that website, in terms of trying to determine how relevant it is, how authoritative it is, and how credible and reliable it is. So yeah, awesome. So with that, we'll go into the first part of the criteria and some questions that I think are needed to be asked when it comes to evaluating a website. And that first thing is the authority that comes behind the information. And this might be something also that might be a given, but I think is sometimes missed in terms of really delving into beyond the superficial level of what exactly is driving the website, because websites aren't free. So there might be different interests involved in how the website was created and for what purpose, and particularly by who. So yeah, there's a few questions I raise here is, does the website identify the individual, group, or organization that created it? What are their credentials? It could be, we're talking about educational credentials like professional experience, any other types of lived experiences just in general. And really though, despite the fact, they may have a PhD or something like that, is their PhD or other types of professional credentials relevant to the information they are providing about? Because they might have a PhD in a very unrelated discipline that has nothing to do with health at all, but because they have that under their title, it provides that certain type of status that maybe patients or clinicians may pass over as they kind of superficially read through the information being provided here. Another important point for to ask is the identity of the creator legitimate? And they can provide pretty much any type of information they want on the website because they own it. So it is really important to cross-reference as much as possible other types of sources that talk about that particular creator, whether it's the individual or the group or the organization, and seeing what kind of reputation they have. Who's talking about them, and in what context are they talking about them? And again, also, like, if you can't find any information elsewhere on the internet, it might put some suspicion as to whether or not they are legitimate. Like, do they even exist? So yeah, so there's that to consider. For me, like I always say, like, look for the About Us or About Me page. That is often found either usually at the top or the bottom of a website, and specifically identifying like the purpose or the mission of the website. Another important thing I actually put on here is what is the contact information being provided? And it could be that they provide the physical address to where they are located, which might be another source of information that you can cross-reference. You can actually maybe Google map it, or some other type of way of verifying their location, if to see it's legitimate or valid. Or, do they only provide a web form to contact them, but it doesn't really provide any information about how they'll reach you back, or any other types of ways of locating them or verifying their identity. That might be another thing to consider as well. And if the less contact information being provided, again, that might raise some suspicions and might require a closer look as to the legitimacy of the health information being provided. Because if they're not providing contact information, which should be fairly simple, how can you trust the actual supposed evidence-based information being provided? So yeah, and to kind of connect to what was also talked about domain name of the website. And I have the examples of like .org, .edu, .com, .gov, and I know several of you were specifically naming .edu and .gov as particularly important. And I even see in the chat, like, always weary of .com. And yeah, and there might be good reasons for that. Namely because .com usually refers to more like commercial sites, which is often suggesting that there is a financial interest in the information that they're providing, either to sell you something, or in some ways too, is to make you pay for the information that's being presented. But before you can even see it, you have to pay for it in some sort of membership access or something like that. So yeah, there might be that kind of paywall being entered there. Again, .com doesn't necessarily mean like all .coms are bad, but it provides another sense of like, you need to kind of decipher what exactly is the reason behind behind the website's existence. And yeah, I know several were saying .edu, which really stands for any type of educational institutions, as well as .gov, which is normally referring to government institutions of some sort, a government agency, or some other branch of the government. So yeah, with those, that can definitely be a good indicator, at least one indicator of being a status of quality, mainly because they might have probably a higher standing of reputation at being, an institution representing education, or again, the government in some fashion. The only thing to be wary of is that they don't necessarily guarantee quality, because there might be biases still laden in the information being provided. When it comes to like .gov, it can kind of depend on whether or not there are any political or financial interests with that. Education, kind of the same thing. There might be different types of ideologies being practiced within the education institutions mission or purpose, and just general approach to knowledge and learning. And really, and that's where you're going to want to really delve deep into the purposes and the missions and anything regarding that, and kind of deciphering what kind of approach are they taking, or really not if they're just taking one approach, but if they're taking a more holistic approach to the topics being addressed. rather than just, persuading you on one particular perspective. The other important thing too is even with .org, which has maybe a little higher standing maybe in some people's eyes in terms of .com and like even .net, but even then .org can easily be bought. Like most of these domains can be easily purchased. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee quality, but it does maybe give you another indication that you might have to delve deeper into the purposes behind it. So again, it's nothing to be taken for granted in that sense. But yeah, is there any particular questions in regards to this? I was actually going to just show a quick example of it if you wanted to. But any immediate questions or thoughts, just immediately apparent here. So just, and feel free again to drop any comments as we go along. You don't have to wait for me to just pause. Feel free. I don't mind stopping and clarifying anything. So, but in the meantime, I'm going to pull up a website here, and I'm actually going to put it into the chat so you can actually visit here, because I think we'll visit here a couple different times just to kind of get a better sense. I really like this website, and there's different reasons why you might discover as you kind of explore the website. But in particular, I was kind of curious, can you, just from a cursory search, I'll give like a couple minutes, identify who is behind the website in this particular case? It could be an organization, could be institution, a person, a group, anything like that. And feel free again to drop in just in the chat, or even unmute yourself. Feel free as well. I'm just kind of curious what you would decipher from this. And again, maybe you want to try to look for the about page and try to see if there's any information there as well. It's a weird website, I know, just for different reasons, but it's a good one. I find it really fun with this one. Any guesses? Just curious. Even if it's like, not necessarily a wrong answer, but I'm fine with any answer so we can kind of get that discussion going. So.
I'm not quite sure about this. It says Tom Way is the copyright. Is that right at the bottom? This
right
is
at the bottom? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really weird.
Right? Yeah, because there's like two different identities being presented here. One is the Tom Way, which, yeah, was my immediate notice when I saw that. So it points out that it's like a single person at least being responsible for the copyright. But I don't know if anyone else noticed that. It's also saying this is the website for the Hydrogen Monoxide Research Division, currently located in Newark, Delaware. The issue I had, at least maybe someone else had a different experience, I couldn't actually locate what exactly, what the about page for this in particular, or even for Tom Way. There's really no description whatsoever. There's no immediate about page that even I was saying, you normally would find one at the bottom of the page here, usually at the top of here. I thought maybe it would be in the tab here, but yeah, it doesn't seem to really have a really easy way of accessing what exactly this division is or who Tom Way is. So yeah, that kind of raises some suspicions as to what this website's about, and particularly the quality and the relevance and the, more importantly, the trustworthiness and the reliability. So yeah, but yeah, that would be totally my way of also seeing is that Tom Way, as well as the first line here as well. Did anyone else? Yeah, can't find a about page either. I see in the chat. No, yeah, I haven't been able to see anything here. I've even done a more deeper exploration just for the purpose of this workshop. Couldn't find anything regarding it. So yeah, that raises some serious questions, and we'll kind of go into more about this website in particular as we kind of go along. But I kind of wanted to first ask that kind of question. So again, that's a first indication that there might be something maybe off, at work here. So with that, I'll return to the page here. So really, the next question then is, if you're not able to identify the credentials, or at least not being forthright here, or even locating a purpose or mission, beyond probably the fact that it was like talking about, the controversy surrounding the hydrogen monoxide, and that's the goal of this website, is to provide an unbiased data clearinghouse and a forum for public discussion.
Well, they also have in here a buy a t-shirt. DHMO
Yes.
kills and ban DHMO t-shirts.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually noticed
Sorry,
that.
but that's
No, yeah, no, I'm glad you actually noticed that, because that'll be actually another indication that there might be something amiss here that we might have to delve deeper into. And actually, that's probably going to be one of the upcoming things we'll be asking about, is what is the purpose of this website? Is it to provide information, or is it to do something else? And as noted, there's a bunch of store type of advertisements on like PayPal, some MasterCard here, so there might be something there too. So that's, I think the other thing to note too was that the website is also a .org, and that would suggest that it's part of an organization. But again, it doesn't really describe anything beyond just the name of the research division. And the only other thing is the copyright is under an individual's name as well. And again, org can easily be bought. It's just like .com. It's just as easily available to purchase. So yeah. Yeah, the fake spam alert link is alarming. Yeah. Yep, that's another thing to note as well. So another really important question, since you all have it on your website as well, and I'll pull it up once I kind of ask about this, is how current is the information being provided here? Again, looking for the copyright, and it does say copyright, but if I notice from the website, it doesn't actually say what the copyright year is or any publication dates. You might even see how often is the information updated or revised. Sometimes they'll specifically name that, and maybe someone can actually answer that, because I'm pretty sure it actually does say that. And also, to look at the links as well. If you're noticing that a lot of the links are broken, then that might be an indication that it's either an outdated website and no longer really in use, or it's just, there might be something else going on with it as well. Or are they currently working? Yeah, and again, cross-referencing the online information with current research on the given topic, which we'll kind of go into, but I'll ask my question about like the revision. So yeah, I see in the chat actually that it was last updated or revised on today, actually. Yeah, and you can actually notice it does say that here at the bottom. Yeah, from my couple looks into this website, it seems to update on a daily basis, which is pretty quick. So I don't know if that's just saying it is updating anytime a new day is starting. That's another thing that can kind of happen that you might notice as well. But that is an indication of, like normally that would be an indication of quality actually. So it's not necessarily a miss here, nothing to suggest anything's a miss. It's just everything else is kind of a little wacky about it. But that's actually probably the one of the good indicators, is actually it's telling you when it was last updated. So it is saying it's keeping current according to the website. But yeah, so let me go back to the thing here. So the other thing I do reference here is cross-referencing the online information. So really, the important thing with any website, no matter how trustworthy it looks, but in particularly if it doesn't look as trustworthy, this is an important point, is to cross-reference the information that it's providing with the current research on the given topic. So really don't always just trust that the website is providing you evidence-based information. You should probably look out for it yourself as well. Like, what are you seeing in our databases, for example? Is it speaking to a similar level of the information regarding the topic being addressed here, and so on. One of the really interesting things too is the links seem to work. Pretty much all the links I've ever used here. But if you also notice, there isn't a whole lot of links as well, which we'll actually kind of get into regarding the accuracy of the information being provided here, and whether or not it's being backed up by evidence or if it's just perhaps more opinion-based. But yeah, so far all the links seem to work, at least from what I kind of looked at. Yeah, you do have links to .gov actually, which, yeah, that's actually a really important point because they do have all of these different websites of the Environmental Protection Agency. So they have the EPA, they have National Institute of Health, CDC even. So they have quite a few like official looking links that all link to these government related websites. And it kind of gives the appearance that, they are drawing, because it says DHMO related info, and to refer to here, that it kind of gives this sense of legitimacy, but it's just referring to the generic links. It doesn't even refer to anything specific to DHMO, the topic it's even talking about. It's just referring to the general website, which is interesting as well. The only other one that isn't, like it does have this coalition here and really just leading into the same website here. And it's just talking about who are we. So this is probably the closest to an about thing, but it's not even talking about the research division that supposedly this website is supposed to be representing. So yeah, it's interesting with this one, that it's actually trying to use very legitimate sites and maybe try to cast that legitimacy onto itself. But yeah, so we'll kind of go from there. Yeah, I saw my internet connection went a little unstable. That's totally fine. But yeah, so again, it's really important just to cross-reference the information. So don't over just trusting that one website to summarize what your topic is. Maybe you do find like a perfect website that's really summarizing a lot of the stuff you wanted to talk about, whether it's for a course assignment or even just professional or personal experiences that you're just drawing from this one website that says, oh, it's actually indicating this seemingly really good evidence about a particular topic. But it's always good to refer to your own search of the evidence as well, and looking at studies and anything like that. Because the other thing too is, like kind of we talked about, there's so much information out there that we can't possibly go through every single study. So obviously these websites are also designed by people who have limited resources and time and accessibility to, say, like databases, that they can't possibly look at everything in the research, and so they might have a very limited scope of what that research is actually telling. The other thing to note as well is, what purpose are they using the current research for? So maybe they are addressing current research that's very reliable, very validated, but for what purpose are they trying to use that information in terms of trying to inform you about something? So, so that's another important thing to consider as well. So yeah, with that, I'll move forward. So yeah, so basically kind of where I was kind of getting at is the information that is being presented here actually accurate, or how accurate is it? And as we kind of talked about, actually, I noticed a lot of people were saying, another good indicator of quality from a website or the health information being provided is that it's providing citations, footnotes, links relating to the information being provided. It's actually substantiating the information it's providing beyond just like, the website developers' opinions and or thoughts or perspectives, and actually providing some actual evidence to justify it. But as we kind of discussed too, are those citations, are those links that they're providing based on sound evidence? They could be providing links to, just magazines, or to other types of websites or other blogs, or other types of evidence that may not necessarily be based on a thorough investigation of the facts or of just evidence in general. And particularly, this is really important in medicine and in healthcare because of the fact that healthcare and medical knowledge is always changing, always just constantly changing. And with new terminology, new concepts, new approaches, new theories, and just new findings, really, just in general. So it's really important to look at, like, are the sources that they're citing based on current evidence, or maybe not. Maybe it's based on like stuff from like 1970s, which in its own way, depending on the context of that 1970s research, might be still relevant. But is there more current evidence to suggest maybe contradictory findings or gaps in the evidence that weren't noted in those previous research? So another thing is to look at grammatical and spelling errors in the information provided. And I actually relate this to the accuracy of the information, because for me, the effort that they would take to grammatically correct all their errors in the actual like text or any type of information that they're providing tells me how much work they put into the actual research behind their work, or at least it gives me an indication. So if you're seeing grammatical and spelling errors in the actual information that they're providing, whether it's in a web page or anything like that, it can give you a clue into how much quality is behind the actual research or information that they are presenting you. But yeah, kind of going back to that website, one of the things I note from here, at least, is the grammar and spelling is actually pretty fine. I actually haven't noticed any particularly like bad misspellings or anything like that. I do notice though that they tend to use a lot of different types of fonts and stuff like that, which isn't really that accessible, like having like tiny things. And honestly though, it kind of uses for different purposes. Obviously for like ads are really huge, like very present versus like the text and so on. And even the fact that they have like a very minimal note here as well that we'll kind of get into in a bit. But yeah, but besides that, I know we were talking about the links that they have and how they have .gov links and kind of providing that, but it doesn't necessarily support anything. They're just general links. So it's not necessarily supporting the information that they're providing, because none of these links actually go to anything regarding DHMO. You know, it's just a general website. So you would have to search up like what exactly is DHMO. So it's not really being helpful in that regard. It's not citing any, like it has these special reports, but you know, it's just still in the same website. So even the reports don't really have any particular like links to anything, nothing to substantiate. And like, even the way this is presented is very, suspicious in terms of how it's being presented. So yeah, again, something to also kind of note is that even these special alerts and advisories, I think even someone mentioned also in the chat about it, is that, you know, these are not necessarily presented professionally. The HMO, you know, and they have these like really great graphics, but aside from that, it's just a bunch of text and like email texts that they're citing, but nothing concrete, like in terms of actual evidence and research. You know, they do cite this particular person, but even then, this is this is not a lot of information to kind of go on, and it's just a bio page of the actual person's website. So again, you know, it's not like going to their faculty profile on their where they work, like veterinary medicine center, you know, or anywhere else. So yeah, it doesn't really have any type of links to anything kind of a little bit more legitimate in that sense. So
I even think the language they used on that last page.
Oh, here?
Yeah. I got my degree. I worked for that I'm the best writer, but that's
right. Yeah, it's presented in such a way that, you know, yeah, it doesn't seem like a CV or a resume or any type of really professional like profile, right? it's just kind of like, a question, and then just like, I got it here. That's pretty much it. Doesn't even really describe, as far as I could tell, any about their degree. Like, it doesn't even say what degrees they got. And again, it doesn't even say master's. It doesn't say PhD. It doesn't even say the level of education they have, per se. I mean, they do have all these, but it, again, doesn't really say much about the actual field that they're in, beyond just saying that they work in veterinary medicine and dairy nutritionist. So, and again, how does that relate back to the hydrogen monoxide? So yeah, there's a lot of questions to be had here. So yeah, I'm going to go back to the page or to my presentation really quick. So yeah, again, I'm using this particular example of this particular website just because it's very unique, and it provides a really interesting case of when a website doesn't provide the information that you need to really validate its legitimacy, or at least to verify, really. But yeah, any particular questions or any comments so far, other than what we just discussed? Just kind of curious. Just figure I'd pause for a moment. Let's see. So I don't see anything in the chat. That's totally fine. Again, if you have any thoughts, feel free to pass them along. We can totally add them to the discussion here. But yeah.
I did have a comment about the last web page we saw. It even had a little smiley face they made. That was also really unprofessional, I thought. But.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Was it probably, I think it was in the dairy industry, right?
It was the page we were looking at right before that.
Oh, right before that. Okay. Let's see. Might have been one of these. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think
you have it opened up. The bio page up top. You go up top, you have a tab on it. The bio page, the second one.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Is there anything here? No. Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah. So, I mean, again, that's not very normal to see, at least in my experience, in terms of seeing, profiles from a PhD professional, a alleged expert in this particular field as it relates to this topic. So again, yeah. And then, yeah, even the way they're saying it, like, that's all I'm going to say about myself and my vocation. It's very, it's very suspicious in that regard. So yeah, good catch on that too, as well. So yeah, even if you see like emojis, and even these graphics in a way are kind of interesting as well. In terms of what, they're obviously having a certain perspective that they're trying to push in this regard, in terms of, banning and so on. So yeah, that's also something to consider. Oh yeah, the website has 2 locations of credit card links. Yeah, it is interesting in that sense. And again, that's actually something we're going to raise in a bit about the purpose of the information being provided here. But yeah, no, that's a great catch as well. So with that, we'll go into what are the website's biases? And this is really kind of the meat of any type of evaluation of a website. Really what we were talking about is more the indicators that there might be something amiss, or maybe there's something legitimate about the website. But really this is the meat of it, at least for me. And this is what I always love about information, is like the nature of bias in it. But yeah, so basically these are some really important questions to really regard. Is the information provided through a certain perspective or viewpoint? And obviously from probably even your own exploration of the DHMO website, as well as from what you saw when I was kind of scanning through it, was that it's obviously pushing for a certain type of perspective. In this case being the banning, or at least the strict regulation of the hydrogen monoxide. Which I'm kind of curious if anyone figured out what that is. It's incredibly vague about what it, how it describes it. So I'm kind of curious if anyone has an answer for that. That'll be a bonus question for this workshop. But But yeah, so it's obviously going to ban it. It's not really approaching it from a very holistic approach of like, you know, the pros and cons, or even just like the, you know, the benefits and the risks, or any type of balancing that you normally see with evidence-based approaches. Like they actually would, you know, critically appraise the information and see what is the evidence that best supports it, and identifying, more importantly, contradictory information or gaps in the literature. So yeah, if you're only seeing that it's really pushing for a certain type of approach, that obviously seems a little bit more opinionated in nature, then yeah, that might be something to consider. The other thing is, what are the website's sponsors? So it's really interesting with this particular website because it doesn't seem to provide any type of sponsorship information. Really, the only thing I could see was this DHMO related info, which kind of makes it look like they're somehow linked to these different websites, or at least in some way supported. And in fact, they actually do reference in a lot of the like different articles that they have about how the EPA, you know, supported their particular position, or maybe I believe one of them was talking about how the CIA was actively trying to stop them and stuff like that. So there was obviously like different types of conspiracy here, and other types of silencing tactics that they were trying to address as well. So yeah. And then like, yeah, and like really the only general information it provides is like find out more about cancer just in general, but nothing in regard to its actual evidence about how carcinogenic is the hydrogen monoxide. Doesn't really speak to anything beyond what it writes, but it has nothing to link you to, or any type of footnote, or any type of citation of any kind to really judge for yourself, you know, how the veracity of the content being presented here. So yeah, and then going back to the other questions here, is advertising present on the website? And that's a resounding yes. Like immediately on the home site, you saw like at least 4 or 5 different areas where it's advertising something through graphics. And the other issue though is that it isn't clearly marked. Like I know I have that question here, is it clearly marked? And in some ways it is, and then other ways it's not, because really it's kind of like support the cause. But it's not saying like that's an advertisement or anything like that. And even here, this particular graphic, you know, it's talking about, you know, different like advancements in particular bottles and such. But it doesn't really like, you know, say this is an advertising space. So it makes it seem like it's more associated with the website in some way, or at least in terms of the topic and the health information being presented here. Yeah. So that's something else to kind of consider. And actually, there's another website I was going to refer to as well if we have some time here, but that kind of does something similar. And actually, just for the sake of it, I'll kind of link it here as well. So I'll put it in the chat so you can actually explore this one as well, just because it kind of hits that point a little stronger as well in terms of the purpose behind the information and the bias. So in particular, this one has a very similar nature of like, you know, having a background allegedly in science and providing an alternative health resource and providing information and so on. But if you look at the blog and a lot of the information it's providing in particular, it's kind of leading back to products that they're selling. I know this pops up quite a bit sometimes, but yeah, even the blogs that they have here tend to go into information about items that they're actually selling. Like try the basic zapper, basically. So basically it's trying to use this presentation of this very official looking look at evidence and research and health information, but ultimately leading down to the point of like, try our products here. And even has like a shop icon. And as we kind of talked about with this one in particular, same kind of principle as well that we're seeing. But yeah, so with that, the other points to note, and this is kind of, again, kind of relating in terms of the actual writing or presentation of the information. And I was talking about spelling and grammatical errors, but also to look out for is emotionally charged terminology or clickbait, as maybe many of you are familiar with, in terms of how headlines and articles will tend to use very emotionally charged or very almost kind of misleading headlines to kind of bait you into the information. So you click on it and basically access it for their own purposes of you entering their website and exploring it and potentially buying something potentially. And I know like news publications have had a real issue with this as well, especially with the advent of the internet. Trying to gain more attention from with your eyes, right? In terms of trying to draw your attention so you can actually click on their resource versus another. But that's a really problematic thing that's happening as well. But graphics are another thing. Yeah, if it uses particularly graphics that try to emotionally appeal to you in a very biased way, in terms of to sell something or to think in a certain way as to like agree with their particular position on something. That's another thing to consider. And yeah, the main question at the bottom too is the website trying to sell you something? And in both of those websites that I provided, they are trying to sell you something. In terms of DHMO, it's all about t-shirts, I believe it was. If you actually click on the actual store and how these t-shirts are made DHMO free, and so you can actually see the actual t-shirts, even though they're very very badly made and badly designed. But yeah, that's essentially what you're looking at, and you can buy it for a good price of $19. So yeah, there's different pieces of that, or as others noted, there's a whole bunch of like links to like Amazon or like credit cards and PayPal and everything like that. And yeah, so that, yeah, and even like this particular thing it's trying to advertise from the creator of DHMO is about South Park and philosophy. So, so there's something to be amiss there as well. But yeah, so with that, I think I'm getting towards the end, which is good because we're at the end, near the end of the hour, which is kind of nice. Really, there's so much to cover with this particular topic, and that's why I love it so much in terms of trying to delve into the internet and seeing what's out there. But yeah, other important things to consider is also another question to ask about yourself in particular. But before I get into that, there was the question of who is the intended user or population. So with DHMO website, clearly it was meant for people who either were interested in the topic of DHMO or actively supported the goal and the mission of that particular website in terms of banning DHMO or regulating it in some way. For the Tools for Healing, the second website that I provided, that one appeared to be more of like if you want to look for alternative sources of health beyond like traditional medicine. That was another thing that was like it was talking about. So yeah, you really want to consider like who is the intended user. Is it meant for consumer health purposes, more just for the public to consume, or is it meant for a clinician or a health practitioner to use for professional usage, right? But yeah, and then really the question also is to ask yourself is how is it relevant to you, and how do you intend to use the information provided? Whether it's for your own personal use, maybe it's for your own personal considerations of your own health or anything like that. Or, as we kind of talked about, like, if you were discussing with a friend or a family member about their, well-being or health in general, that might be something. You might be using it for a course assignment. You might be using it for research. You might be using it for clinical application for the patient. And something what I really kind of want to stress about, particularly the last three there, the course assignment, research, and clinical application, really the thing you want to use internet information for is as background information usually. It's typically better used as a way of gaining a better sense or a better understanding of your topic, either that you might cite in some way if it is like a highly reliable source, but in terms of informing or contextualizing your particular paper or research or anything like that. Not necessarily for clinical applications, but yeah, just kind of getting a better sense of your topic. That way you can develop like relevant keywords, so you can actually use those keywords to search through our databases for more scholarly information in that sense. But really, I typically use internet information in whatever way it's presented, more as a starting ground, at least to kind of develop where my topic is going to go, and cultivating those terminology that maybe I didn't really consider about that particular topic, or I wasn't aware of. Again, super useful if you're trying to brainstorm more relevant or more effective keywords, because maybe the ones you were using weren't very useful. And again, even for research, sometimes you may use it more for just the overall background behind your research, not necessarily to inform the actual study or anything like that, but just to contextualize, how is the public discourse of this topic going? And then wrapping it or relating it to your own study and how you're seeking to address something about it, or to answer a question or to help support something. But yeah, so that's how I kind of tend to use internet information. Anything I find from health information, I tend to use in that way. There are some websites that are actually pretty useful for somewhat in a clinical aspect or a research aspect, and I'll kind of actually point out one that's really good at just the end of here. But yeah, so that's what I kind of like to stress about this information. And other people have different perspectives on it, but honestly, that's always been my approach to health information found on the internet. I don't really use it as a way of supporting my argument or my position or my research or anything like that. I just use it to contextualize and kind of give me ideas of where to approach it from. So, but yeah, if you have any questions or comments, feel free in the chat or unmute yourself at any point. But with that, the last thing too, and it's kind of a short one here, is what is the coverage of the information? And particularly, I was alluding to the issue of, do you have to pay to access the information? And in the two examples we had, the two websites that we were discussing, you really didn't have to pay necessarily for the access to the information, but it was kind of leading you to ultimately support it through other means, either buying one of their products, whether it was a t-shirt or a medical device that was supposedly useful in some way to your benefit. But there are going to be places where maybe it does require you to subscribe, or it requires you to have a membership of some kind and stuff like that. So that might be another thing to kind of consider.